on today. You've got myself, Fred Hedges, and Michael Stairs.
Good morning,
just
everyone.
Morning, Michael. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Please have your microphone switched off, so that we don't get any feedback. If you hear a fire alarm with the microphone switched off, the chances are it's either going to be yours or mine. So please make sure you're safe and connected to your building safely. I'll just put that in there because, you know, when historically when we were face to face with these things, we always gave a fire alarm safety drill, and yeah, just thought I'd chat that in there. We would invite questions in the chat box and endeavour to answer them at the end. And obviously, there's always the added bonus of my dogs barking and the postman arriving. If that happens, I shall apologise profusely and endeavour to make my way through it. So a little bit about us then. So myself, my name is Fred Hedges. I'm one of the area building control managers. I've been in building control since 2006. I was originally a builder, self-employed, specifically bricklaying. I've got a qualification in bricklaying. I've got experience in all aspects of building control, domestic, commercial, schools, and you know, pretty much across the board really, and part of the safety advisory group for Huntingdon Racecourse. I also do a lot of mentoring and training and upskilling within the team, and we have quite a few trainees and people training, but at very different levels. So we've got level 4s, 5s, and 6s. So some just beginning their degree, some midway, and some at the end. So it's we like to keep it fresh, and yeah, it's a lot of work to be honest, but it's all good. I did the Arthur Rank Hospice, dedicated over a year of my life to this one. A few of you may know it. It's just on the outskirts of Cambridge. It's a cancer treatment and end of life care centre. It's a charitable trust, and yeah, it's fairly new. It's probably about 5 or 6 years old now, but yeah, it's quite extensive. And I'll just put these two photos on here just to see, just so I could show the Fenstanton Clock Tower. I've been one of the blessed few that have actually managed to get inside of it. There was an issue a few years ago regarding someone who used to go in and wind the clock, and somebody went in and put a handrail in, and you know, and that sort of thing. So it's all very interesting. This photo, I mean, it interests me. It's quite fascinating actually. I find it quite very interesting. This is sort of late 1800s, before there were such things as, you know, sort of cars. Everything was sort of horse and cart, and you can see the horse here. This is a much more modern photo where you can see the cars, and I think it would be really good over the next few years to get a sort of a third sort of montage picture to get electric cars and electric vehicles in there. But yeah, a fascinating building, very small, and yeah, if that could talk, I'm sure it could tell a tale or two. And I'll let Michael introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Stairs. I'm another one of the area building control managers. I've been with building control since 2017, but as you can see, before that I worked as an architectural technician for a small architectural firm in Little Downham. Left there to join Anglian Water, where they put me through a civil engineering degree, and then I hated civil engineering, so I decided to come back to the building industry, and I did that through Cambs Home Improvement Agency, where again did a building surveying degree and got my professional membership. Worked on all sorts of projects with 3Cs and enjoyed it immensely. And the first picture, sort of bottom left, that is Hawkston flats. They are flats for the over 55s, and there's 94 in there, which we did a few years ago. The ones on the bottom right there are two sort of top-end luxury homes that we've done. One's in Godmanchester and the other one is in Hawkston. And the other two in the middle are just two sort of small light industrial projects that we've done. Yeah, and that's me. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Michael. A few things that we're going to have a chat about today. So just some bullet points. Just a sort of a bit of an overview on COP26, what it is, and the recent commitments that COP26 has shared, what it's all about, really. Just a quick sort of overview on that. Moving on to the new and revised approved documents. I haven't put approved document F in there, but the ones that are relevant for energy and sustainability, and we'll go through that and how that affects everything. More importantly, how it fits in with the council and what we do, and then I'll hand over to Michael, and so he can explain our role and the initiatives that we're doing within our team, and some of the things that the councils are doing to accommodate that. I think the most important thing is to remember here, and to really sort of instill before I go any further, is everything that we're going to talk about today is going to affect everyone. It's going to affect everyone from the moment you wake up in the morning, your house, your expenses, going down the shop. It's going to affect everyone, no matter what you do. So, and it's important to remember that everyone's going to need to play their part. But and you'll see anyway. Let's have a look. So COP26 then is the 26th meeting of the Conference of Parties, also known as the 26th year that governments, NGOs, trade unions, businesses, and everyone else within the interest of the climate change meet to review and negotiate global action. The Paris Agreement, which was adopted at COP21 in 2015 in Poland, the majority of the world's nations committed to containing global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and preferably aiming for about 1.5 degrees. It was a major culmination of more than 20 years of diplomatic action. NDCs is the nationally determined contribution. So when they have these discussions, they'll come up with an idea of what their contribution is going to be towards climate change. So a timetable was agreed in Paris in which each country is expected to submit an updated national plan every 5 years for limiting emissions. It's all about reducing the carbon footprint, right? So, and obviously adapting the impacts of the climate change. Since 2015, more than 190 countries have published at least one version of their nationally determined contributions. 190 countries just here. That's huge. That is huge. How many countries are there in the world? Google it. It's a political issue as to how many there are, because some are recognised and some are not. But again, not getting into the political side of things, but it's almost everyone, and everyone has at least published something to say what they're going to do to reduce emissions. The Paris Rulebook countries gave themselves 3 years to agree on the implementation guidelines, and at COP24, the UN Climate Conference in Poland, in December 2018, countries adopted the majority of the Paris Rulebook, aka the Katowice Climate Package. I think that's how you say it. I've actually been there, but I'm still not sure. But it's in Poland anyway, and it consists of 3 core tenets: plan, implement, review. But it kind of left a few unresolved issues, i.e., the carbon market, to how we're going to achieve zero carbon. So this is not new. This is we've been talking about this sort of quite considerably since 2015, for 20 years. But in 2015, then we start sort of getting into sort of the nitty gritty of stuff. So our commitment, our promise in zero carbon 30, I think they're calling it, is the government's ban on the sale of new petrol and diesel cars will come into effect from 2030, with the sale of hybrid cars being outlawed by 2035. So, hybrids, petrol and electric mixed, and it's very energy efficient. And the UK government has announced the ban of gas boilers in all new homes by 2025 to help combat climate change. This is a big step, and this is one of the reasons why I'm saying it's going to affect everyone. Domestic gas boilers emit twice as much carbon dioxide as all power stations in the UK, reducing air quality and having significant effects on climate change. Let's just look at that for a second. This is taken straight out of COP26. Domestic gas boilers emit twice as much carbon dioxide as all power stations in the UK. So historically, years ago, when we looked at, climate change is bad, and you saw these big steam towers outside the power stations, the reason it was just steam, but the reason why it was bad is because it was taking the smog, or the bad air, if you like, at lower level. It was carrying it up to higher level, freezing, and then taking it across the atmosphere, and then, well, this is what we were told as years ago, and then it was dissolving over the Arctic, making a hole in the ozone layer and thawing the Arctic out. I can't remember the last time somebody mentioned the ozone layer on the news or on a platform such as this. I think it's because we're now past that. It's much more serious now. You look at the rate at which the icebergs are melting. Something's got to be done, and that's what this is. That's pretty much what part of what this is about. It's reported that the use of gas in homes could be phased out by the mid 2030s. So let's say 2025. Okay, that's 12 years from now. And I'll or 12 and a half years from now. Is that right? Have I got my maths right? 7.5 years. Yeah, right. Okay. Do apologise. Right. Okay. So moving forward then, just have a quick look at that. Part of this, that when we said, what can we do and how can we eliminate this and how can we eliminate that, and on the 1st of October 2019 to the 7th of February, Future Home Standard, the government brought out a document, invited all the industry professionals, CIC, LABC, MHCO, lots of individuals to this, to do a public consultation on how we can do and what we can do to make things more energy efficient. So from Building Regs point of view, that's approved document L, conservation of fuel and power. And this is the first stage of the consultation. And that was called the Future Home Standard. The second stage was referred to as the Future Building Standard. These are actually the consultations. They're on the .gov.uk website. You can just put in the search bar Future Home Standard or Future Building Standard. They're on there. And this was the second stage. So this is not a new thing. I mean, it's 2022. We can go back to 2015 so far. Just in this discussion today, we can go back to 2015, 2018, 2019. We're pulling our finger out. 2020, we're really saying, right, these are what's got to be done. We all know that I mean, I can't remember the last time we had a really snowy winter, but we all know that the winters are getting wetter, and this is not an uncommon sight now. We see this on the news. It's not uncommon, and the summers are getting warmer. I think Cambridge City recorded its highest last year or the year before since records began. It's prominent, it's prevalent, it's in everyone's face, it's there, it's something that we live with, and it's something that we absolutely need to do something about. So I just wanted to mention this as a Future Homes and Building Standards, because it was the backbone of part of moving forward for energy efficiency, and it's kind of the backbone of the recent changes that we've got coming in. They're being referred to as FLOSS. If you Google FLOSS approved documents, you'll get lots of things come up, specifically from the LABC. And the approved document L has been revised, and it comes into force on the 15th of June 2022. As does, we have another 2 new documents, and F has been revised, although I haven't included F in this because we're talking specifically about energy and awareness. It is part of it. It kind of ties into it, but not so much. So previously, it was 4 documents. It was 2 documents for existing and new and existing for dwellings, and then commercial, new and existing for commercial, or buildings other than dwellings, as it's pronounced. Anyway, they've amalgamated them into 2 documents, one for dwellings, one for buildings other than dwellings. There are some big changes here. Big changes. In a nutshell, things have to be more airtight. We have to more stringent. We have to ensure that that when we create energy, because when I use the word energy, I mean heat. When we create it, we need to conserve it. We need to make sure that just shutting your window, make sure your windows are shut and the energy can't get out around it. There's no gaps around it, and in other areas as well. So, if somebody's put an extractor fan in a bathroom, we've got to make sure that, there's not oodles of heat escaping out of there. Therefore, your boiler's just going to keep on running. It's a bit like having a freezer with a bad seal that doesn't seal up. If the heat keeps getting in, your motor's just going to keep on running, or your condenser's going to keep on running at the back. It's going to be expensive to run, and it's not going to shut off. There's no, it's just that kind of scenario. Anyway, I digress. So extension U values are going to be better. I'm not going to get into detail, but that's colossal. It's going from 0.28 to 0.18. We had big changes in the past when it just changed 0.5. It's now changing 0.1. So instead of changing 5 points, it's now changing by 10. So that's twice as much insulation or cavities or whatever. That has to be looked at. That's got to be thing. It's all about conserving energy and making sure that we can keep it tight and inside the dwelling. Lots of the changes reflect passive house standards. I don't want to get into that too much because I know that Michael's got a slide on it, so he can sort of give you some details. But as a quick sort of overview, we're looking for properties extensions as well, not just new properties. We are looking at the airtightness of them. We're looking at the quality of the build. That's always been an issue. It's the reason why I believe we exist as building control surveyors, purely the quality of the build, as well as it being compliant. U values are massive now, and it's and it considers shading for the first time, which is part of passive house. So the building fabric and the way we heat our homes is very important. It's very important. It's something that everybody needs to consider. But it's great having an energy efficient heating system in your house, but is your wall actually retaining it? So once you create the energy, once you have that expense of creating the energy, whether it's through gas or PVs, you still cost. Is it still retaining the energy? And that's one big thing that building control get involved in. The 2 new documents that we have is O and S. So I've just had, I don't know, about 5 minutes sort of explaining that we need to shut the windows. We need to seal everything up. We need to, keep that energy in. Now, generally, that's the winter time when it's cold outside and, when we want it warm inside, or we want it warmer inside, because it's all about comfort. And comfort is a very big part of the building regs now, and it reflects on the comfort as well. So there are numbers. So now we are kind of discussed, how we need to shut all the windows, keep all the doors shut, make sure everything's airtight. O is now telling us to open them all in the summertime when things get too hot. So, and we're looking at natural ventilation, because obviously, if we're looking at an alternative energy source, the requirement for the building regulations, it does say that can be used, but only as a last resort, and it's right at the bottom of the requirement. So I don't think it was there. I think it was when it first came out. It's been reviewed already, so I think that was one of them. But it's yeah, so it's got to be in there now. We've talked about cross ventilation in roofs for condensation for years now, and in cavities in some cases, especially when there were empty cavities years ago. But now we're talking about the actual rooms themselves. We've always had background purge and mechanical ventilation, but I think there's somebody threw a figure at me in Birmingham last week when I went to the LABC floss presentation. There's around 4,000 people a year that die through heat exhaustion. And you know, so we need to raise awareness and ensure that, you know, adequate cross ventilation is provided from, you know, opening a window at the front, opening a window at the back, and to make sure that we get that cool air going through. It also considers as well built up areas for homes in the city, for flats and things like that. In the countryside, in a village or in the countryside, or even some of the smaller towns, the houses actually cool down at night. So if you've got a hot day, if you leave the windows open and stuff, it actually cools down at night. In the big cities, they don't. They sort of stay the same temperature. So, you know, we need to consider that. And it affects the sizes of the windows. If you can't achieve a cross ventilation, then the size of the windows need to be increased. And also corner flats, for example, you know, you're not going to get a cross ventilation on a corner flat, and all those things are considered in approved document O. So yeah, it's so the windows and door sizes are required to determine suitability of positioning. There's actually a couple of whole pages for postcodes that tells you, you know, what you need to, what strategies you need to use. But it's London and some places in central Manchester. So moving on to approved document S then, quite simply, you know, so you can see where O is part of this. Moving on to approved document S then, infrastructure for charging of electric vehicles. Looking at this document, I thought, oh, great, simple. It's on new builds for new build dwellings, and it's nice and straightforward. We all know what an electric car is. We all know what, we've all seen them, mostly. We've all seen the electric charging points, whether they're, you know, outside of a neighbour's house, maybe, or certainly in supermarket car parks and the odd council car parks around. You know, yeah, nice and straightforward. We call the electrician, we get the charging point put in that matches our car, and we're sorted. It really isn't that straightforward. It's you know, they've got the regulation actually in with the requirement now, and it's mentioned here. There's actually, I didn't put it on here because it would take me 20 minutes to talk through it, but there's actually a couple of charts to say, right, okay, you know, if you're doing this, you go to that box. If you do, you know, you go to step 3. If you're doing this, you go to step 2. If you're doing that, you can go to jump straight to step 6. But when you get to step 6, you might have to jump back to step 1. It's a minefield, and it's blowing everybody's mind at the minute. But in short, in English, I would say associated people, when they talk about associated parking spaces within the curtilage of the dwelling. So an associated parking space, when a new house gets built, we're looking at an associated parking space within the curtilage, so within the boundaries of that dwelling. They need to have a charging point. If the charging point's too much, then if they cost too much money, then like 3,600, I think that's the cap. Then we don't need to worry about putting actually a unit in, but we have to put the infrastructure in. So cabling has to be done as a minimum, if not. So that all depends on numbers and things like that. Just a quick interesting slide here then. So the associated parking space is this is the definition of it here. So yeah, 3,600 per charging point cap if exceeded. So material change of use. So that's when if you're doing a material change of use for a barn conversion, then cabling is still required. Obviously, they're still required for the future, and this is why. In 2018, there were 15,510 electric and hybrid cars registered in the United Kingdom. In 2019, that more than doubled to 37,850. 2020, 108,000. So a year, it's gone like double to almost triple, 108. And then in 2021, I guess we could blame, like, well, I don't know, blame coronavirus and the pandemic for everything nowadays. But we're up to 190 now. By 2030, they are predicting there will be between 8 and 11 million electric or hybrid cars. And this is what we're doing here. Approved Document S is starting to address that. Okay. Yeah. So you know, I don't think at the moment we're struggling to have the infrastructure at the moment for 190,000 cars. I believe we're struggling with that. So imagine what it's like when it jumps to this. So that's really interesting. How this fits in with the council then, each authority has its own net zero strategy, and it's clear that they're all doing this. And when I say each authority, I mean, you know, you've got South Cambs, Hunts and Cambridge City there. We are 3C shared service, so everybody in our team is representing each area. We are one team. We do pretty much inspect and check plans in any area because we're one team. But these are the three, obviously, that we're representing, and they've all got their strategies. Reducing carbon emissions for council buildings, lands, vehicles, services. Reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions for homes and buildings. Reducing carbon emissions for transport. Reducing consumption of resources, waste, increase recycling, upcycling. In my day, we used to call that hand-me-downs. Yeah, so you know, I love that word, upcycling. I love it. Promoting sustainable food. I have an allotment. It's quite a large allotment. I love my allotment, and I love the food that comes off my allotment. You know, yeah, so promote that. Supporting council services, residents and businesses to adapt to the impacts of climate change. So this is the strategy moving forward. We've got the zero strategy for, you know, to go zero carbon by 2030. And please do bear in mind that everything that I've just spoken about, and you know, and these changes that we've got and they're affecting everyone, this is just a stepping stone. Okay, so it's a stepping stone towards the future. So now we've got, you know, with the changes that are happening now on June the 15th, they are now also 2025 is going to alter again, and 2030 it's going to be changes again. And then obviously 2035, we'll see what happens then. I'm going to hand over to Michael now, and so he can carry on. Thank you, Michael. You're on mute. You're on mute, Michael. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Fred. Yeah, just realised that. Thanks, Fred. Yeah, so our role within all this is an important one, as Fred's already outlined. As ever, our role is to regulate building work and to ensure compliance is met to help with the future use of the building, the running cost of the building, and the comfort of the occupants within. Also to raise awareness, such as these sessions we're running this morning, and also Fred runs a lot of awareness sessions through Reber East and through the university, which have been very popular. Attention to detail when plan checking is essential to ensure relevant sections of importance are detailed on the working drawings so that builders know what is expected of them on site. Also, attention to detail when inspecting, ensuring that adequate seals of each element, i.e. such as making sure the cavities are sealed around windows and doors, etc., etc. Promoting renewable energy. As Fred's already outlined, gas boilers are going to be phased out, and it isn't as straightforward as taking a gas boiler out and putting an air source heat pump in. There are an awful amount of extra stuff that needs to happen for that to work efficiently. And of course, supporting the council's net zero strategy. As part of that, the team have come up with some initiatives. So we're trying to reduce the amount of mileage that we do. Obviously, we attend site visits every day, and everybody drives a car, and we don't yet have many of us driving around in electric cars. So that's important that we reduce the mileage, and being able to work from home is obviously a massive part of that. Becoming paper free, we are working hard to be paper free. Some people might say we're currently paper light, although there are quite a few initiatives in place to try and reduce the amount of paper that we use, and giving our agents the opportunity to submit applications online, email, and now we've even got a planning link with a planning portal, so they can submit an application straight through the planning portal. We're also using technology to help reduce carbon emissions and to make us more efficient service. We're currently trying the LABC inspection app, which is much like any face-to-face app where you can like FaceTime, etc. But the main difference with this is that it has the ability to geotag the builder on site, so you can see exactly where he is, and they're even trialing where he's in a block of flats. You can tell whether he's on the first floor or second floor. This is just so that we can tell exactly where they are, and they're not trying, well, they would of course, trying to pull the wool over our eyes and stand on the first floor and say they're standing on the second floor when the work's actually not complete. Also, we're about to trial the iDocs inspection app. This is an application which you can see on the bottom right, where every morning the surveyor will get his list of inspections downloaded onto this app, and it works out the most effective route for him to carry out that inspections. That of course is not always possible, because we do get builders saying, oh, we got concrete coming at 12, and then if the app says this is the last visit, then obviously we're going to need to arrange the app. But this will hopefully help the surveyor work out the most effective route, and B, save time, because the whole point of this app is that it downloads all the information for every job onto his handheld device, so he has all the drawings and all the photos, etc., that have been taken previously, and also he will be able to upload new photos so we can track the progress of work more efficiently. Another initiative that we're working on is we're now able to provide thermal imaging surveys of the properties. This can compare before and after any building work is undertaken. This in itself produces quite unique challenges due to with the thermal cameras. As you can see by the first picture on the left, this was taken sort of around about midday, and the trouble is that the sun warms everything up as we all hope it does. So you can see where the red is where the heat is, and as you can see in the bottom left, the road is bright red, so that's absorbed all the heat. So one of the things we need to do is to get out very early in the morning before the sun has a chance to warm too much up to take some photos. So the middle photo, we can see there's quite a lot of coal bridging. So this is a 1952 ex-council house, where over the windows there are concrete lintels, and we can see these are sucking out the heat from the house. So you've got a nice red stripe over the top of every window. And also with the roof, there doesn't appear to be an awful lot of roof insulation. So this is a south-facing roof. Sorry, a north-facing roof. So it hasn't had time to warm up. So that is all the heat loss coming from the house. And the third photo is just an anomaly, really. This again is around about a 1960s house, but the house itself is covered in an ivy. So it looks like it's incredibly well insulated, but the actual coldness of the external walls is purely because of the ivy that's all the way around it. You can see that this is an old front door, and it's leaking heat, as you can see, quite effectively. And next to it here, where the green is a modern UPVC window. So it's very clear. You can see the difference between a modern window and an old front door. Also within 3Cs, we're spending a lot of time upskilling our staff. So we're training 2 members of the team to do SAP assessments and EPC certificates. This is a bolt-on service, which will we're hoping will bring in more money to 3Cs, because we're always being asked who can do it. So hopefully, with the not too distant future, we will say we can do it for you, which would be absolutely excellent. We're also training frontline staff so that we can give basic energy advice, especially now as the heating costs are spiraling, and the figure of 54% increase is a massive. So if we are able to give them basic advice around boiler replacement, draft proofing, loft insulation, wall insulation, floor insulation, and even very simple stuff like insulation, the old copper heating tanks and pipe work, because there's still an awful lot of copper hot water tanks out there. We've also done training around retrofitting of insulation and solving of damp problems within listed buildings. Again, this is very important that we work together with the conservation team so that we are able to, actually put some of these new regulations into force within listed properties. Just as a side, I thought this picture here of the loft insulation is very relevant. Because a lot of us insulate our lofts, but we still need to use them as a storage area. So it's important not just to put boards straight on top of the insulation, because all you're doing is flattening it, and that obviously reduces the effectiveness. So they've produced this little plastic leg which you can then support your decking on, so you can still use the loft space as a storage area. The passive house, the 3 of us within the building control team are undertaking a Passive House Institute course. This will enable us to be called Passive House Consultants. It's quite an intense course, but it will mean that 3C's building control will be able to offer quite a range of services, such as the dynamic simulation of buildings new and old, and this is using the Passive House Institute's Excel spreadsheet, which is an incredibly complicated spreadsheet where you have to input all the information regarding the property, right down to the material that you're using on the walls. It's absolutely incredibly detailed, and every single little thing will affect the outcome. Ventilation systems, measurement of the flows. This is incredibly important within Passive House. Because obviously it's all an in-house ventilation system, so you're taking warm, damp air out of one room, such as the bathroom and the kitchen, and treating that air and then pushing it back into the other rooms, so you're not wasting any heat whatsoever. U-value calculations, typically windows within passive house are triple glazed, and they have double seals to prevent air leakage. Thermal gain and thermal shading, as Fred said, this is getting more and more important. It's incredibly important within the passive house. You don't overheat, because there's quite often there's very little way of cooling down a passive house other than opening the windows, and that's a bit more tricky in passive house because they tend to open inwards, not outwards. Air tightness is massive within a passive house. Within the current regs, the building control, we like to think they get it down below 5. Within a passive house, it needs to be below 0.3, which is incredibly airtight. Cold bridging as the biggest way of losing warmth out of a property, and as you can see in the diagram here, where there's vertical shading, the actual support structure for that doesn't impact into the dwelling itself. That again is to reduce cold bridging. And the big philosophy with passive house is getting it right first time. So there's an awful lot of work up front to reduce, to agree the details and the work and the workflow to build it right first time, so that we're not having to undo things to get it to pass the necessary air tightness tests, etc. So that's it from me.